All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first of many episodes of the Cultural Catalyst Live series. My name is Dana Wilson. I am the CEO and founder of CHIP. Really excited to have you all here. I know it's been a really long time coming and all the things that we're doing, and we're so excited to start this series, to have this conversation, have these really unique conversations in a way that I don't think has really kind of been done before. So we're excited to bring you four experts in their fields in so many different ways. They have been paving the ways in their own rights within their different and perspective industries within financial services and career paths. So I'm really excited to bring them on and get the conversation started. So today we'll be talking about protecting your legacy, a really open conversation and dialogue, probably the realest conversation we'll see around estate planning. So without further ado, let's bring on our esteemed panel of guests today. So excited to have you all on. How are you all doing?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome. I feel like we got to work on the intro music. That'll be for the next time.
I was gonna. That would be a nice
living elevator sound.
Right. Dancing going before we get in.
I know. I was just like, I don't know if I like that one. So we'll do better next time. We'll kind of throw in some maybe mixes of MJ, kind of see what the room is feeling. But
right.
Super excited to again have you on here. So we'll kind of start and just do some very quick introductions. So just tell a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and some unique fact that no one might not know about you. So Nathan, we'll kind of start with you.
Hello, Nathan Moore, Agape Planning Partners. We're affiliated with Plan Member Securities, located in California. And I love to travel, so I've been to 48 states, 17 countries. And a unique fact is my shortest visit to a country was 8 seconds. I jumped off a train in Europe, and that's how I visited Austria. So I still count it, but I didn't get a passport stamp, but my feet were on the ground.
We can still count that. We can count that. Yeah, we'll give you your stamp.
Thank you.
Hey, Keith, what about you?
Keith Miles, the law office of Keith Miles, based out of Georgia, Atlanta area, and I'm also in North Carolina. I'm a certified elder law attorney, so I'm one of 12 in the state, first African-American to get it in the state of Georgia. And my fun fact, I'm born on August 13th. I'm left-handed, and that's International Left-Handers Day. So I'm as in your right mind as anyone can be, is what I say.
Oh, wow. I like that. I feel like you have to get that on a t-shirt.
Day for the left.
Yeah. That's awesome. And Gloria.
Yeah, my name is Gloria Garcia Cisneros. Born in Mexico, raised here in Southern California. So that's where I'm currently based right now, out of a firm. And a unique fact about me. I would say that I like to dance Latin styles. So I, on the side, dance salsa, bachata, tango, kizomba, and a lot of that side. I try and bring, I haven't had a chance to merge my world of finance and dance as much as I'd like, but we'll see one day.
I feel like there's a big opportunity for that.
You need people to teach dance at a conference. I'm your girl.
There we go. You heard it first here live on the Cultural Catalyst. This is what we do. We bring you updated news.
Yes.
Breaking news.
Yes, breaking news. Thank you. Shahara.
Yes, my name is Shahara Wooten, and I'm an author, a speaker, a certified financial planner, and I manage a firm called Your Story Financial. I also have a company called Your Story Financial Academy, where I focus on STEM professionals and really helping them build their wealth. I would say I wasn't going to even bring this up, but I used to be a line dance instructor. And the point of it was to bring your line dancing, have your line dancing in line and your finances in line. Still working on it, but it was fun. So for a few years, I taught line dancing. But the fun fact I wanted to share today was that I was a reporter for concerts. So I used to go around the city and the state of Arizona. I used to live in Phoenix. And I would go around and interview artists and talk to them about their journey being an artist. I've interviewed Israel Houghton, The Truth. I didn't get to interview Ty Tribbett, but I reported on his concert. But quite a few Christian artists, so contemporary artists. So that's something I used to do.
Wow. So I feel like there's an opportunity for a lot of like mixing of music and dance and finance.
Yeah,
this goes with everything. So there's an obvious group that can get started here, and then you can have like backup dancers. You got Nathan, you got Keith.
That's right. That's right.
I love something new and special.
Exactly.
Yes.
I feel like that kind of ties into the conversation at hand, right? I love how you just kind of said something new and special. So something kind of different here where we have this like open dialogue around estate planning. And we'll just kind of kick things off. Like, what has estate planning meant to you from that kind of standpoint? And we'll just kind of kick the conversation off. So feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. What I find fascinating about estate planning is I've been in business 24 years. But the first half of my life, I never even heard the word of estate planning. And the first 8 years of my career, it wasn't discussed. And so when we think about legacy and estate planning in the neighborhoods of color, it's just not a conversation that's had. So it became prematurely taboo. And then fast forward to today, it's still hard to even talk about because most people think about when Big Mama passed away or when so-and-so passed away, and they think about the negative of life transitions and don't really think about the joy and fun of planning for estate planning. So that's something that I find fascinating, that even today, it's still taboo to talk about.
Yeah, when you said that, I think for me, it is that mindset shift in our communities. And I feel like there's so much legacy and culture, and we're so rich in a lot of ways, but we don't see that as part of estate planning and that legacy we pass on. And I wish that was more talked about, because it's not just about money, because sometimes we feel like we don't have money. So what is estate planning? What am I really planning for? To be, underground? It's not a happy subject to think about when you put it in plain terms, like planning for death. But I think if we shift the mindset and shift how we speak around legacy and everything that it can mean, and how you can plan for, the stories, the money and how the story behind the money. And I think we can find a lot more value around that. But it's a huge mindset shift, because it's taboo to even talk about money in general, let alone the next step of what happens to that hard-earned money that you built with your certain values and your culture when you're not here, right?
Absolutely. And I agree, because I think of it as an opportunity to create generational wealth. And I do see that in our communities, that phrase being used a lot. But when you get down to the actual, let's make this happen, that's when it becomes, oh, I'm not ready. I don't want to talk about it. I just recently had a situation where I, was chatting with my mom about a family member, and, they didn't have a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney, and his siblings were fighting over who's going to, take control of all this. And I was like, and I'm just going to be real. I mean, I said, Mommy, so what about you? Like, what do you have? Oh, we're not going to talk about that right now. Yeah. Even though we see all the challenges that's happening with this particular family member, she was just like, no, I know you guys are going to be fine. I know you guys aren't going to fight. I was like, how do you know that? How do you know we're not going to fight over anything? I have 2 sisters, and people have their thoughts, people have their thoughts, and people change. And it's just a real conversation, and it actually hurts my heart, for her to say that, but yeah, she doesn't want to talk to me about that. So, but that's real. That's real in a lot of families, even as a financial planner.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like sometimes it's hard for, families even being in this industry. Go ahead, Keith.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of hit the estate planning wall, or it hit me, because I was a tax attorney, and then my first wife, she wound up getting cancer, pancreatic, and it was kind of just tense, 6-month period. So I had to kind of learn myself, and I was like, well, thank goodness I could teach myself. But then I kind of left that, say, whoa, what is like everyone else doing? Because I'm at least going to go to a book and kind of figure it out. So that kind of caused a shift for me to say this is really important, because at that point in time, I was still in my early 30s. I wasn't thinking about this as some topic until later in, 50s and 60s that I would even think about doing. And the thing that kind of hits me, even when I'm doing it now with my clients or prospective people that just approach me, they'll say, you know what? I don't need estate planning yet. I just need a will and a trust. And I'm saying to myself, okay, well, what do you think it is? Like, what does this term estate planning mean to you? Because to me,
Right.
obviously, I know that's exactly where in the heart of it. But I think there's such a thing in people's mind of media or something that estate planning is just this wealthy activity that is just not even most of the population. So I think that's kind of the thing where I love what we're doing and just saying, hey, no, it's kind of everybody and it's people, and it's, in addition to property, it's people, your kids and your family and how you want things to work. So I think that education is critical just to get people started.
Yeah. What I hear you saying, Keith, is like separate the money from the family and the people, and estate planning is all of that combined. And so don't just think you have to have a multi-million-dollar asset to do estate planning. The reality is, it's like, how do I make sure my kids aren't fighting? How do I make sure this jewelry is going to my niece that was there every Saturday hanging out with me? Things like that.
Absolutely.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say when I was working with an assistant that I had years ago, she was sharing with me that her aunt, she had a conversation with her aunt, and her aunt told her that, yes, you're my next of kin. You're my niece, you're my next of kin, and I have beneficiaries named on everything. Everything is taken care of. Well, fast forward, the aunt passed away. Come to find out, she didn't have beneficiaries on everything. Not everything was taken care of. And one of the things she shared with me is that the hardest thing was finding out that there weren't any beneficiaries. So now she had to open up probate. She was in Arizona. Her aunt was in Florida. It was just a whole thing. And so she was concerned, being the next of kin, like what would happen? Is there anybody else who's going to try to come to the forefront? Then she was concerned about, like what you were saying, Nathan, about, I have to touch every single thing she owned. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this. Like she went through her house and she had to clean it. She had to, she said it was like a decision she had to make for every item, everything, because they hadn't gone over it. But also, she was the only one that was left to really take care of that. So, I mean, this is real, this is very real.
I don't think people think enough about the burden it can be. Like they're thinking about themselves, which is fair, right? We don't want to tackle hard emotions, but the emotional burden that it can be on your kids that you love so much. And so I think sometimes, either whether we like it or not, you're going to have an estate plan. It might just be not the one you want, right? The state's going to implement what they want. Your kids are going to have to go through probate. So when I heard it coined that way, like, there's an estate plan for you. You can either create it or you're going to go to the default version. So do you want to have say in what happens to you and your stuff and how hard you worked for, or are you going to let your kids who may not know everything you have, or the state, like where you're at, determine how things happen? And like that empoweredness, shifting that to them, because otherwise their kid might be, on the contrary, like burdened and like upset and going through difficult times and the emotional, and then waiting on the state to figure things out. So shifting from like I think the burden and the emotional side to the empowered now. But it's still very hard.
Absolutely. It is. I mean, it'll still be hard, but like you said, Gloria, you actually do have an estate plan. Mm-hmm. You have one. So now it's a matter of, do I have one where I'm empowered by it? Because I do think, and I've heard this said many times before, having an estate plan is one of the most loving things you can do for your heirs, for the people that are coming behind you. And again, we always talk about generational wealth, and it starts with taking those actions today. And, you plan for the best situation should the worst happen. That's what you're planning for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And Keith, I know this is kind of like your wheelhouse too, right? Being in estate planning. So how does that kind of affect you?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
You want to, like, I guess my uncle had a saying growing up, it beats a blank for someone to have a plan, right? So sometimes you want to say just have something, but what we see as attorneys is you really can't let people do their own thing. They really need to have some talk, because so many times their assumptions of what to do is based on their own logic, which kind of sometimes contradicts with some things that should be done. So, for example, if I have 3 kids and I might say, if I'm doing on my own, well, I'll leave everything to the oldest child, and then the other ones he'll take care of the other ones. So, that causes problems in and of itself, or they'll put someone on a joint ownership of a bank account rather than make them POA. So then that person winds up getting everything. So a lot of times we say, we want you to be proactive, but we also want you to use, the help of a professional. So whether it's, an attorney or financial advisor, just talk to someone, because so many people are out here, we kind of joke as attorneys, we'll see them on the back end because they do their own, LegalZoom, Orman Trust, and they'll just do it on their own because they want to get something done and save some money, but they don't understand how much damage they're doing. So we really just want to say, hey, we appreciate the energy, but we still have to do it in a certain way. And we're in different states. I'm in Georgia, and I heard California, Ohio, and Lori, where are you at?
Los Angeles, so California.
Okay, so for attorneys, we are so state bar driven because we understand each state is so different. So I'm in Georgia, North Carolina, and they're polar opposites. I wouldn't even think about doing California, especially in my area of Medicaid. They don't even have a limit anymore. It's this, everything is so different. So if someone pulls a form and they think, okay, I can check this off as done, you are not done. And it's, you might have done something contrary to actually what you really want to do, but you don't know it because you don't know how the document will be interpreted by the laws in that state.
Yeah, what I'm finding in conversations I'm having right now, I'm finding one of the biggest issues is that the family unit has become so fragmented that people who want to do estate planning don't know who to pick to be their participants in their plan. And it's like, I don't know who I'm going to list. I don't know who I want to give this to. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to start the conversation sooner in our relationships to give them time, because most of the hesitancy is not the fear of mortality. It's the fear of making the mistake of picking the wrong people to be empowered, or having somebody lord over their siblings because they're, tasked with managing the estate. So that, I think that's the thing we have to work with people on, is helping them see who should be the key players in your estate plan, to take away some of that anxiety of creating one.
Yes, I agree with that. And, there's an article out saying that it takes only 3 minutes to just update your beneficiaries. But what I'm hearing from you, Nathan, is it can take longer, like the actual act of doing it is super fast, but the time that it takes, the emotional energy that it takes to actually get through, like, okay, who is going to take over these different areas of my life when I pass? It does take a lot. I mean, and that's where I think even Keith, where you were talking about aligning with professionals, someone to help, I think that's so powerful, because that's a great way to bounce some ideas off of someone who is not really they don't have anything to gain from it, right? So we're fiduciaries, that type of thing. They're not going to say, if I stray her, try to direct her, persuade her this way, then I could get this. Or you might be thinking that person could get something, or they have an ulterior motive. But yeah, running it by a professional so that you can take that 3 minutes to update your beneficiaries and feel confident about it is just, it's key. It's essential.
I think too, for our younger generation, I tell my friends and family who are younger, who feel like we're invincible, and I don't need to think about it. It's still like 2, 3, 4 decades away. Like we think about retirement, same issues, right? But what I tell them is, a lot of this stuff, unless it's like irrevocable, like stuff that's more permanent, you can change. Like the goal is just to have something in place, but we can go in and change beneficiaries. We can go in and update things. So I remind them, like, it's better to have something than nothing in that scenario. Not to say they shouldn't think it out, but it's better to have, your sister, and you'll eventually talk to her if you walk through it, but it's better than nothing being listed. because people don't even engage in any action. So I agree that, it takes 3 minutes. It might take a while. So if we bring it up with people in their 20s and in their 30s, it's much more productive conversations. They'll have decades to think about the permanence of it, but at least getting something in place, because otherwise there's nothing. And a lot of it can be changed. So, we can go in and easily, people don't know it, but it's a beneficiary, right, on your account. It's only a matter of a document that you have to sign. If you have kids or get married, like, things change, and you can easily update some of those basic documents.
So
I have a question for Gloria. Dana.
Oh no, go finish your thought.
Yeah, I have a question for Gloria, because I'm on the older age of the other end of the age spectrum nowadays. So me and my friends, we're being thrust into this conversation because our parents are in the 70s, or grandparents are in the 90s. So whether we want to talk about it or not, we have to. Mm-hmm. But for your generation, what are you doing to get people to actually sit down and have the conversation when they're not required to, because they're not actively dealing with it right now?
Yeah, I think I make it real for them. Like, I tell them, like, hey, I'm healthy, and I'm in a situation, but we don't know what tomorrow holds. And it sounds kind of grim, but I do tell people the only thing guaranteed in this life is death. Like, not like, I don't start there. That's pretty grim, right? But I do let them know, like, tomorrow I could be in a car accident.
I might say you were keeping it real. So
yeah,
right.
There's no filter here. I might not hopefully develop something like a long-term disease, but I could get hit by a car. I could, fall and trip on the stairs. I could break my knee. I could become incapacitated. Like, there's so many things, and it's not just death. It's also incapacity, right? When we talk about powers of attorney and what could happen to our body, or medical directive, when we talk about something at the hospital. So I just remind people that we're not invincible. We're young and we're healthy, and hopefully we live for like a very long time. But the real risks of things that aren't death, I guess I kind of bring that into the picture as well. And like, that can happen to anyone. Like, we can't predict that stuff. So, and it helps if there's been a scenario where, hey, that wasn't ideal, and like, your sister, this happened, or this could have happened to her, and we wanted to make sure she was safe, and making it palpable to them. Because if you talk about 40, 50 decades from now, or, oh, we want to talk about how your parents are going to pass down things to you 40 years from now, well, then they're going to wait to look into it 40 years from now, or maybe 39 years and 360 days. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are definitely good about trying to make the math make sense, right? But always these hashtags. And it's interesting too, because someone who's watching kind of mentioned, do you think that the barrier to entry from a cost perspective matters? Like, what kind of happens as you're having those conversations with your clients?
I would be interested to hear from everyone else who's like maybe more experienced in that way, because I think that's what keeps a lot of people from it. There's a lot of platforms, hopefully leveraging technology. But Keith, you said, like, sometimes it's better to not, you don't want to just do something for the sake of doing it, like maybe, more things that are more complicated, like trust or irrevocable estate planning tools. So how do we balance that with at least doing something if we can't afford an attorney?
Yeah, the most important document that I would tell people, because most people, when they come in, they think, will and trust, and that's like the one that think about the high dollar item is the most important thing. And obviously, if they pass away, it's critical. But the power of attorney is really, especially because I do elder law, and like Gloria mentioned, it's not only passing away, it's incapacity. That's the document that we worry about, because that's the document actually could, if depending on how much you give too much, it could result in someone taking your estate while you're still alive and misusing it or redirecting it. But that's also the form that's in my state, most states, a statutory form. So most people don't actually have to spend money to get it. We'll usually do it and kind of work through them and say, here's, an explanation of what you can select and what are the implications of it. But if someone really wanted to get started in certain documents like the advance directive, or what they call healthcare power of attorney, living will in some states, or the power of attorney, those are usually documents they can do for free, which is also sometimes part of the problem, because they say, well, I can do this for free. Then they go and do it on their own, and then it winds up being inadequate, or on the opposite side, too much. So the price barrier is part of it, but part of it is really, from my experience, just a reluctance to seek assistance, right? Because even a power of attorney, for most attorneys, they might charge, $500 or so just to make sure they get something out of working with you, but it won't break your bank, and you can have some things in place if you need some really basic stuff. But a lot of people still like, I can get the software and it's $79.99, and why should I talk to the attorney? And so I think that And I'm sure on the investment side and things, somebody's like, well, I can invest my own money. Why do I need to talk to somebody about it? And it's like, well, if you really looked at it, you could be so much further along if you just work with somebody, but it's hard to get people over that hurdle of asking for help sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's a hard conversation, but it's a conversation that needs to be had. And I often talk about the differences between price versus cost, right? People that balk at the expense of getting their estate plan in place are usually looking only at the price tag of it. But then when you show them what it would cost not having it, they realize how much of a deal it actually is. So it's just taking the time to say, look, let's talk about it. Depending upon where you live, in California, the costs are typically higher than most other states for the services, but also for the estate plan and probate fees. So we show them, say, yeah, this may cost you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, whatever it may be, but by paying it, you're going to save potentially $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 that you'll still be able to give to your heirs because you now have the proper documents in place, and just get it out the way.
Mm.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's a great point. I hadn't thought about that because I think typical probate length is 12 to 18 months in California, which if you people value their time a lot more nowadays, I think. And so if you give them that equation, that's a very also not just smart in our way of like making sure they know it's important, but I think that's a way that they can make it palpable. Is it worth it? Like if I don't do this, that's a year and a half that my family waits. And I think that time component is key, not just like, will they get the assets? Yeah, they will. Mm-hmm. But what do you have in place to make that easier?
Yeah, I think this is really key catalyst to the entire conversation, right? And I know, Shahara, you do a lot of like really great storytelling with your clients as far as like things that have, they've experienced and things that you've experienced by working with them. Like, how do you smooth out that conversation and getting people comfortable there, right? And that's obviously for all of you at the table, right? We know this is a topic that is not necessarily the sexiest. It's very uncomfortable. It always equates to, if I put this in place, then someone's going to be after me. Like all the things that we think about, especially from a community standpoint, right? Where we get all these, misguided and misdirected stereotypes out there, and then we just don't do anything, right? Because we kind of, cringe up. But to all of you all, and I know, Shahara, you tend to tell a lot of stories about different things related to your clients. Like, what does that conversation flow look like to get people to just be comfortable, to just act?
Yeah, I think it's really important to look at their mindset. So I'm really big on, what's their mindset? Where are you presently? How are you looking at life? Like, what's your story? What's your story? How did you grow up? What are the things that motivate you? And we can be reminded of that in our conversation. And I like to understand where you're at, like where's your current situation and where's your desired situation, and what is the gap between that? And we can figure out, like, in between there, how we can fill in the gap so that you're more confident about your financial situation and the life that you've imagined. So I really like to get people to think about their life that they've imagined. Even in my book, which is right there, right? So in the meantime, I talk about, living your imagined life and really looking at your life like a story. And each chapter has its own elements of the story. And looking at the last chapter, we all are going to have a last chapter. And really sitting down and saying, okay, let me visualize, what would that look like? How do I want this to be? Do I have like a bunch of grandkids? Do I have a whole estate, a compound, like a house, and everybody's coming there on vacation and they're using this property to vacation every year, and everybody's kind of sharing. Like, I hear people share these kind of stories, and then that's where we can start to say, okay, this is going to be the motivating factor to help you keep that at the forefront and motivate you. Okay, now's the time to talk about something you don't want to talk about, but we can get this out the way. And like I said, we plan for the best situation. We're not predicting that the worst will happen. And, because I do deal with a lot of folks who are very, very much big on their faith, and faith, is a big deal. And you don't want to speak out like things that are bad because then they can happen and all those types of things. So we have to kind of back up and say, well, we're going to create the best situation. We're going to look at like, this is the scenario that we want to have happen. And how do we work today and start just slowly but surely ticking off the list. Okay, this is what I got to do now. I got to create my beneficiaries. Let me just check, make sure everybody's, there's something for everybody. An IRA, I got an IRA, I've got a 401k, I've got, long-term disability, I've got all these different things. Let me just make sure that I've got those things done. And then I say honestly, from a mechanical standpoint, give yourself 90 days. Look every 90 days and see where you're at. And then that way it's more bite-sized and it's not so overwhelming. And then just evaluate yourself over those every 3 months. So I like to break things out in every 3 month or a quarterly, if you want to use that schedule, but really just every 90 days, just reviewing what you have and looking at various aspects of your plan.
I don't know if it's different. I think the financial planning versus obviously the attorney standpoint, but as we go into more and more technology, as a youth engages less, I think I always remind myself the power of just listening and not imposing our thoughts as financial planners of what should be done on the clients. So if we create that safe space for them, because we already know, and like acknowledging the feeling of uncomfortableness and the fear around it, and meeting them where they are, letting them we bring it up, but not that pressure, where you really guide them through what matters to them, like you were saying, and finding what's going to motivate them. But just like simply not talking at people. We're there to help make this the most uncomfortable situation, because we know it can be, and then passing it off to hopefully an attorney that's going to continue that care for the person and making sure they don't feel like a checklist, right? It's not just like, here's the 5 documents you need to do this. It's my duty to make sure you're taking, like, you could approach it that way, or it's like, hey, we're doing this because, like you said, your family matters to you. This is why, and you don't have to do it all at once. I know this is not easy, and just always removing our assumptions of how things should be for them, I think is kind of the way I try and approach all these delicate topics.
Yeah, you bring up a great point, Gloria, because I remember early in my career when people would say, I don't know, I thought that was just them blowing me off and not wanting to give an answer. But actually realizing that they don't know and they need time to talk through it so they can come up with the answer. So asking the questions and giving them a chance to work through their answer is something that we as professionals have to give them that courtesy. Otherwise, they will just close up and not get anything done because they truly don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And if they
I have
have
a little different view, I think, because I had a question for you guys, because you guys are all financial CFPs. I'm assuming you have a similar method where you're kind of really focused on the long-term relationship. So you might meet with someone for a while and maybe get to know them, and then over time you might, explore estate planning and see whether they're open to it. And then if maybe not the right time, you might be coming back to them. I don't know if that's how you do it or not. But with us, we're so one time meet and determine whether we're going to work together, right? Because they're coming to us and saying, hey, I'm exploring this. We're coming to them to say, are we going to work with you? And a lot of times the barrier is, you may have maybe multiple meetings. I don't know if you collect information assets on them from the first time, or you might wait to get to know each other, then get it later. A lot of times the attorneys want to get that information because we need to kind of get a sense of what the big picture is. But of course, they don't know us. So they don't trust us. So sometimes they're very resistant to give that information. So then the attorney is like, well, if you're not going to give me the information, I really can't give you advice, right? So it becomes a problem sometimes because we are very transactional. We're not designed in our relationship to be long-term. We're here to get, you might be able to get a fee. I'm assuming mostly assets under management, and you get 2024 fees and 2025 fees and 2026 fees, and hopefully that relationship keeps going. If I do a trust with someone for $10,000, I can't do it again in 2025 and 2026. It's kind of supposed to be up and running and set, right? So I'm making that evaluation. What do they need? Am I going to work this person right up front? So a lot of times, if they don't come from an advisor, it's much easier with an advisor because usually you're vetted to kind of say, hey, this guy will take care of you. But if they're just coming from, off the street or Google or Facebook or whatever, and I say, hey, I'd like to, kind of look into your, background and assets and people, and they're kind of like, well, I just want to know what general talk about what a will is or trust, and I can't really do anything for you until I know something underneath the surface. So it is difficult on our end to get to that point where we can say, we can't really make them comfortable with us. We could try, and sometimes we'll have longer meetings. So I might say, hey, don't give me the background up front. Maybe we'll tell me during the meeting as we start to talk. But, sometimes some people are talking to multiple lawyers. So they might say, well, I'm going to talk to you, and then I'm going to have another, meeting schedule with someone else, and maybe I'll circle back. And, a lot of attorneys are like, hey, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be part of the roadshow. Like, I expect the kind of commitment if you're coming here and I want to give you my time and you give me your time, and we kind of really dive into it. So it is a problem just structurally the way we have to work with that kind of one-time view of, are we going to work together?
I think that's actually a really interesting point that has not really been discussed kind of live and open about the style and the relationship of how that goes, right? That's a very fair point about there is more of a relationship established when you're on the maybe investment advisory side. That's not necessarily established on the other side where it is like, okay, we're trying to do this like transaction immediately. And then kind of after that, it seems like the relationship is built. So that's, kind of like a great format to kind of talk about so that people really understand like there's a difference in how the relationship might show up, but just understanding that and being kind of okay with that and knowing that that's normal. So I'm glad that was kind of a topic that came up. So I know we're kind of coming up a little bit on time, but just want to give, room for any kind of last open thoughts that you all have really based on, anything that you've seen or impacts that you've made, even success stories, I think would be great for things that would happen. So we'll kind of just do a round robin of maybe like some wonderful success stories that have happened from someone either having an estate plan or kind of just having the conversation and then maybe taking it home and there was a success there, right? Because that's also a success as well. Let's see. Anyone? Nathan? What's up?
Since you picked on me. One thing I will say is that something I see far too often, unfortunately, are people who have completed their estate plan, but is grossly outdated. Mm-hmm. So when you take that first step and you take that major step and you get it done, make sure you're revisiting it every 3 to 5 years. That's what we usually encourage. But the one tip I like to give people is something I had to learn myself. I have 3 children. They're 29, 20, and 18. When my oldest daughter had her first child, it was the first time I was advised and instructed to get an estate plan for her. Not from the asset side of it, but from the power of attorney and the healthcare directive, because if she's traveling and something happens and I go to the hospital, they won't tell me any information about her because she's an adult. So one tip I give people is that if you have adult children, really sit down and consider getting an estate plan done for them. At a minimum, the power of attorney and the healthcare directive, so you can still be part of their decision-making process.
Awesome. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would definitely say try to do things early. Yeah, I would say do things earlier than later. So many times, especially because I do elder law, we have people who are calling because they are calling for someone else, right? So that person has already shown signs of decline or incapacity. And by the time they come, our options are limited. Sometimes we can't even do anything if they don't already have some documents in place. So then we have to fall back on guardianships and conservatorships, which is going to serve no one. So a lot of times, I would say to people, have those unpleasant conversations. Especially with holidays coming up, Thanksgiving, Christmas, this has to happen sometime. So it's better to happen earlier. And even if it results in the person not doing anything at the moment, you may plant a seed that they then, come back later, earlier than they would have before and do it on their own. Because the last thing we want to do is have some emergency happen and we just are kind of handcuffed because we just don't have the legal authority to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gloria or Shahara, any last or closing thoughts or stories?
I was going to say more so like 2 little practical things. I sometimes clients I've seen created that, like, spent money, thousands of dollars, and created a trust, and they get to us and there's nothing retitled in the name of the trust. They have all the accounts still, they have the house, and then we ask them, do you have a trust? Like, yeah, we have a trust. It's anything in the name of the trust. So just these little checks that come after, which you wouldn't know about. Or I also heard this other sad story where they created a trust, but it wasn't notarized. So just these little practical things that I don't expect people to know, but it's good to know that there are multiple steps to this outside of just drafting a legal document, that without them, like, make it almost not pointless, but to an extent it can be.
Yeah. That's a great point. And just to share a quick success story was one where I met up with this lady. I met her actually at her doorstep, and she decided to work with me. And we worked together for quite a few years. But then obviously, being that she was older, she passed away. But she had beneficiaries named on this particular account. And she didn't have a lot of possessions, but her son, she was in Arizona. Her son was in California. He called me, and he was just shared with me that he knows that his mother, had this, and we were able to get it to him, And so I think that is just a great way to just share how easy it can be. It can be very easy for your beneficiaries so that they can be able to take those funds and use them for the various goals they have. But a practical tip I do want to leave with everybody is just is basically if you're working, a lot of you are working that are watching this right now, I recommend stop using your work email address to communicate about your finances and all the things that you do financially. Because if you were to pass away, that email usually is not going to be able to be accessed by your relatives. So you want to start using your personal email address for those business matters that can be accessed by your family members, because the job, the employer, depending on the type of business it is, they're not going to let you go through all the emails until you find usernames and passwords and communications from the bank or whatever you're using. So really start using your own personal email address. So go through and do an inventory of that.
Wow. I feel like that's such a powerful close, because that's the one thing that we don't necessarily think about, right? If we're on our email, especially our work email, and we're just having conversations back and forth, right? It's so easy to just not even think about, let me do this for my personal, when we're in potentially work mode and have to transition off. Yeah, I don't even think, I know I do that all the time, right? Although, it is my company, I will search through whatever I need to, but in the event, there's things that could happen, right? Where we're, in that corporate spaces that we won't have access. Well, I appreciate all of you being a part of this open dialogue and conversation. I'm really excited to kick off our first Cultural Coins live with you all. More conversations to come. So thank you all for, taking the time to drop in some knowledge, drop in some gems. I appreciate you all also being part of our CHIP Professional Network. So thanks for all of the time, for showing up and dropping all the bars that you did. And I promise next time we'll do some really cool music intro. Maybe everyone should have their own song when they step on stage. It's like, hey.
I like that idea.
Right. We'll have to do the virtual, some sort of walk across. Don't mind us, everyone. This is open conversation, but really, again, thank you all for joining. Please tune in for the next episode of the Cultural Catalyst Cultural Coin series. We'll have more details out for our September episode, where we'll focus on investing, philanthropic investing, and also impact investing. So for all of you all who are interested in that topic, make sure you tune in. And if you want more information about CHIP, you can find us at chipprofessionals.com. Really excited to have more professionals join our platform, and stay tuned as we continue. Everyone have a great day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.